Morning, afternoon, and evening. Welcome to the Global Intelligence Report. Now, get ready to experience news as it should be. Calm, clear, and factual.
All right, the date is Friday, August 1st, 2025. You know, with so much happening all at once, it can be tough to see the big picture. So today, our goal is to give you a really structured look at the key global trends that are shaping our world right now.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to talk about a world of new walls. Then we'll look at some nations under pressure. After that, we'll dive into the global economic crosscurrents, check in on a planet in crisis, and finish things up with some really fascinating revelations and discoveries. All right, let's kick things off with our first section, a world of new walls. This is all about how countries are, well, redrawing the lines on the map. Not with armies, but with trade, sanctions, and this big push for spheres of influence. And it's all coming to a head today, August 1st. This is it. This is the firm deadline. You know, there's been a ton of speculation, but now it's official. The US has confirmed it. No extensions, no grace period for their big new global trade policy. The clock has run out. So what exactly is this new reciprocal tariff regime all about? Well, think of it as a massive shakeup. The main goal here is to just blow up the old way of doing things. The US is basically using these tariffs as a huge lever to pull countries into brand new one-on-one trade talks, trying to get what they see as more reciprocal deals. This isn't just tweaking the rules, folks. This is a fundamental shift in how global trade has worked for decades.
And it's not just about these big, sweeping tariffs. At the same time, the US is getting really specific, really surgical. They're using targeted sanctions as another major tool in their foreign policy toolbox. It's kind of like a 1-2 punch. Broad economic pressure combined with very precise strikes.
And what's really wild is just how wide-ranging this all is. Let's take a look. First up, you've got the US State Department putting visa restrictions on Palestinian Authority and PLO officials. The stated reason? Their push to use international courts and alleged support for terror. Then you jump over to South America, where a sitting Brazilian Supreme Court Justice, Alexandre de Moraes, is hit with sanctions under the Global Magnitsky Act. The US Treasury says it's for an oppressive campaign of censorship. And then over in Asia, 6 Indian companies are getting sanctioned. Now, this isn't part of the new tariff thing. This is specifically because they were trading oil with Iran. See the pattern? Each one is different, but together they show a really assertive, go-it-alone US foreign policy in action. Okay, so these aren't just moves on a global chessboard. They have real, and in some cases, pretty severe consequences on the ground. And one of the places feeling the impact most right now is Africa, because many nations there had their entire trade relationship with the US built on a completely different set of rules. South Africa is a perfect example of this. And this chart, wow, it just lays it all out, plain as day. For years, South Africa had this great deal called AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. That meant 0 tariffs on their exports to the US, a huge advantage. Now, that's gone, replaced by a new 30% tariff. It's no wonder the opposition party in South Africa is calling this a devastating blow. We're talking about a serious threat to their whole export-driven economy. But this isn't just about money and trade. It's bigger than that. It's about geopolitics. This quote here from the Institute for the Study of War really puts it into perspective. All these economic changes are happening while this great power competition is heating up in Africa. As the US changes the economic rules, you've got Russia moving in, making friends in the Sahel, and even pushing towards the coast. It's creating this really complicated, kind of unstable situation. Africa is becoming a major stage for this global rivalry. Okay, let's pivot now to our second section, nations under pressure. We're shifting from the big picture of global economics to zoom in on countries that are dealing with some really intense problems at home. From open warfare to deep, deep political crises. And we have to start in Ukraine. There was a horrifying attack on the capital Kyiv overnight. The human toll from this massive Russian missile and drone strike is just heartbreaking. We're getting reports that at least 13 to 15 people were killed, and one of them was just a 6-year-old boy. And on top of that, the very same attack left more than 130 people injured. You can just imagine the strain on the city's emergency responders trying to cope with that.
the scale of the damage to the city itself is immense too. Over 100 buildings were hit. And we're not talking about military targets here. We're talking about residential apartment buildings, schools, even hospitals. This is being seen as a major escalation, a deliberate attack on civilians far from any front line. Now, from a country at war, we turn to one that's in the grips of a serious political crisis. Over in Pakistan, the situation around the former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his PTI party, well, it's been simmering for a long time, and now it seems to have boiled over. The government is really cracking down hard on the opposition. So, how did it get to this point? Well, you can trace it back to those riots back in May of 2023, right after Imran Khan was arrested. That kicked off a wave of arrests of his supporters, and now it's all come to this. A Pakistani court just handed down a massive sentence. We're talking nearly 200 people, including a key opposition figure, all jailed for 10 years. It just goes to show how intense the political pressure is in that nuclear-armed nation. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the new government in the UK is facing a totally different kind of pressure. The number of migrants trying to cross the English Channel in small boats has just exploded. I mean, look at this. This time last year, the number was about 16,500. This year, it's already over 25,000. That's a 51% jump. It's the highest number ever recorded this early in the year, and it's putting a ton of political heat on the government to come up with a solution. Now let's head to Myanmar, where we're seeing some pretty clever, or maybe cynical, political moves. The military junta has just lifted the state of emergency that's been in place since they took power in the 2021 coup. Now, why would they do that? Well, surprise, surprise, they've announced they're going to hold a multi-party election in December 2025. But pretty much every international observer is calling it a sham, a fraud. And here's the kicker. The head of the junta still holds all the real power. So this isn't about restoring democracy. It's widely seen as an attempt to legitimize their military rule. And finally, for this section, we see the U.S. trying to walk a very, very fine line in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. A special U.S. envoy, Steve Witkoff, just landed in Israel. His official mission is to tackle the really severe humanitarian crisis happening in Gaza, and he's going to be inspecting food distribution centers. But, and this is a big but, this is all happening while the U.S. is also slapping new sanctions on Palestinian leaders, and while some of America's closest allies are moving to recognize a Palestinian state. It's a classic case of trying to manage humanitarian aid and tough politics at the exact same time. All right, on to our third theme, global economic cross-currents. What we're looking at here are some really conflicting signals from the world economy. You've got signs of contraction in one huge economy, a big vote of confidence in another, and a major controversy that pits climate goals against energy needs. Let's start with this number, 49.3. This is the latest manufacturing PMI number coming out of China. Now, all you really need to know about PMI is that 50 is the magic number. Anything over 50 means growth, and anything below means things are shrinking. And at 49.3, this is now the fourth month in a row that China's massive manufacturing sector has contracted. This isn't just a one-off bad month, it's becoming a trend. The numbers point to a few worrying things. Factory activity is weakening, exports aren't as strong as they were, and people inside China just aren't buying as much. This is a big deal, signaling some serious economic challenges for the second largest economy on the planet. Okay, now for a really interesting policy U-turn with worldwide implications. Back in 2018, New Zealand got a ton of praise for banning all new oil and gas exploration offshore. It was seen as a huge climate-friendly move. Well, now the government is flipping that decision completely. They're lifting the ban. Their reason? Energy security. They're worried about potential blackouts. But as you can imagine, this has set off a huge debate. Opponents are calling it archaic and a massive step backward. It's a perfect snapshot of this global tug-of-war between climate action and immediate energy demand. Now, before we jump to our next story, let's just quickly explain a term you're going to hear. It's called an Extended Fund Facility, or EFF. Basically, it's a special kind of loan from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. It's not for a country that's just a little short on cash. It's for nations facing serious, long-term financial problems. It's a major intervention. And that brings us to Argentina. In a total contrast to the bad news from China, the IMF just gave Argentina a big thumbs up.
They reviewed their EFF program and are sending them another $2 billion. And they specifically praised the country for its strong policy implementation and for keeping a tight grip on its finances. This is a huge vote of confidence, a real financial lifeline, and it shows that it's not all doom and gloom out there in the global economy. Okay, now we turn to our fourth section, a planet in crisis. And here we're going to look at the environment, focusing on two really serious crises happening on different continents, both of which really show the immediate and frankly devastating effects of our changing climate. First up, we're going to southern Europe. The Iberian Peninsula is, well, it's on fire. There are massive, out-of-control wildfires tearing across Spain and Portugal. It's so bad they've deployed thousands of firefighters and even the military to try and get a handle on it. And this is all happening during an intense heat wave, with temperatures getting up over 40 degrees Celsius. That's 104 Fahrenheit. And scientists are being very clear about this. They're linking the intensity of these fires directly to climate change. And while Europe is battling flames, we're seeing another environmental crisis unfold in the Amazon rainforest. After what seemed like some really good progress, new data is showing a major and very worrying setback for conservation efforts there. This timeline really tells the whole tragic story. Just last year, in 2023, Colombia was celebrating a historic low in its deforestation rate. It was a huge victory. But the newest data from 2024 shows a sharp, dramatic spike upwards, basically wiping out a lot of that progress. It's a tough reminder of how fragile these environmental winds can be and how quickly things can go in the wrong direction. All right, for our final section today, we're shifting gears a bit. Welcome to Revelations and Discoveries. We're moving away from geopolitics and economics for a moment to look at two really incredible stories. One uncovers the mind-boggling hidden cost of spying, and the other reveals a connection in the animal world that you would never, ever expect. Let's start with a number. Just let this sink in. $12.5 billion. According to Australia's intelligence agency, ASIO, that is the minimum amount of money that foreign spying costs the Australian economy every single year. It's just a jaw-dropping figure that puts a price tag on this hidden world. So let's get into the details of this briefing. The head of ASIO just announced that they've managed to disrupt 24 major foreign spy operations just in the last little while. And he was not shy about it. He straight up named China, Russia, and Iran as the main countries behind these operations. It really pulls the curtain back on this kind of secret economic war that's being fought every single day, way below the radar of most news headlines. And for our last story of the day, we're going to end with a bit of a riddle. What on earth could connect a top predator from Antarctica, the leopard seal, with a simple nursery rhyme you'd sing to a kid? Well, the answer comes from some really cool new science about communication itself. So to get this, we just need to understand one little concept. Information entropy. It sounds complicated, but it's not. It's just a way to measure how random or how predictable something is. So something with high entropy is totally random, like radio static. But something with low entropy is very structured, very repetitive, like a catchy little tune. And here is the mind-blowing part. A new study analyzed the songs that male leopard seals sing underwater, and they found out they're not random at all. In fact, their information entropy is incredibly similar to that of human nursery rhymes. So what does that mean? It suggests their songs are structured and repetitive for probably the same reason our nursery rhymes are. It makes them easier to learn, to remember, and to pass on. It's just this beautiful, unexpected example of how different species can arrive at the same solution to a problem. And that is the state of our world on Friday, August 1st, 2025. We sincerely hope that by bringing you just the facts, calmly and clearly, we've empowered you to make a bit more sense of it all. If you value this approach to the news, we'd be so grateful if you'd follow us on Insta at world.oneread and maybe share this with a friend. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with more headlines for you tomorrow morning at 0800 GMT. Until then, keep smiling and making this world a better place for everyone. And hey, don't forget, you can listen to This Explainer every single morning on Spotify and YouTube. Just search for us and hit that follow button so you never miss a beat. We go live at 8 a.m. GMT.